Welcome into another edition of the Musketeer Report podcast. It is July 9th, 2024. And as you might expect, not a whole lot is going on in the world of Xavier basketball right now. But in the offseason, we have these different things that come up from time to time to get us through. And one of those things has become the TBT and the Zip 'em Up Xavier alumni team. It's been something that we've come to follow during the summertime. And here to talk about that with me is Jason Meyer, or as you may know him on social media, Cap X. Jason almost makes me sad because, like when we first started doing shows together, I first asked you to come on these things. It's like, am I allowed to call you by your real name? You were just a burner online and you were insane. And I didn't know what might come out. I didn't know if I'd be allowed to publish the podcast after we got done. And now it's like, you're Jason Meyer, the GM of this team, and you're not online saying crazy things anymore. It's like, it's almost a little sad, like when I get nostalgic about what you used to be.
Yeah, I get that a lot. We might be growing up right in front of our own very eyes, Rick, but I like to think that time will, continue. It's going to be a cycle. You know what I mean? No, but it's an honor to come on a podcast I've listened to more times than I care to count. But yeah, we're growing up a little bit, trying to find our way in the world. And it's funny, the quick little Kenny story. We were doing the podcast together, he and I, for like over a month. And he sent a group text to me and to Coop, saying, "What's Cap's name?" Like, I don't know his real name. Like, we've been doing the
Kenny
podcast.
Freeze you're talking about. You're now co-host.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, what's Cap's real name?
Yeah, what's Cap's real name? We've been on the podcast for like 8 weeks ago.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, honestly, I don't know how long it took before I actually knew what I think actually I found out that I had been communicating with you for years as Jason Meyer, or your screen name Jay Meyer, and didn't realize you were also the same person who was Cap X at that time. So
it is really funny introducing people from like my regular life to like the Xavier community, because they'll be like, they don't even know your name. Like literally all night. It's like Cap. It's a whole different, it's a really, really weird, but I love it so much.
Okay, so let's jump into the Zip 'em Up, the TBT action that I brought you on to talk about. First things first, this is always part of the deal here when we're trying to get ready for TBT. Who is actually on the team this year? There's a lot of shuffling of names, and it's always mysterious, hard to figure out. So can you update us on who is on the roster?
Yeah, of course. That's always the fun of it. And yeah, it's always a very strange rolling out process. But your core is going to – so that we released the core of Paul Scruggs, Trayvon Blewett, Adam Kunkel, Nate Johnson. And then today we just announced James Farr, Remy Abel, Malcolm Bernard. I'm trying to think if there's any Xavier guys off the top of my head that I'm forgetting, but that's going to be your main core right there. We'll probably add a couple of what we call grad transfers in TBT, which will be a couple guys who are non-Xavier guys to kind of fill some roles. But that's the group you're looking at right there.
Are there any guys, well, like when you're putting these teams together, I'm sure there's wish lists because you were a fan. That's what made you start all this and get into it. Are there any guys out there that you'd really like to get involved that it just hasn't worked out for? And I'm not saying like, Najee Marshall, who's in the NBA cashing giant checks. Obviously, he's not going to get involved. But are there any like realistic names out there that you were thinking about that just wasn't able to make it happen?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been like the white whales, of course. And I think that it's tough, being a part of it, and fans will comment and be like, well, why isn't so-and-so playing? I'm like, well, we wish he was playing too. But I get it. And I think, with the namesake, Zip 'em Up, it's like there's always been two Holloway's been the big white whale, of course. It would just be really cool to see that happen, to see him, suit up one more time at Cintas, just how much of a legend he is. How fun would it be to see him play a UC team? And I think the other big one, I think you're going to resonate with this one, is Jalen Reynolds. I mean, because I kind of see TBT as like Devereaux on steroids.
Yeah.
And like I used to get excited as a kid of like a Xavier, team that had like 3 guys from X on it for Devereaux. I'm like, me and my dad are like, let's go watch this game. And it's like we get to put together a whole team. So just to see him just be unleashed, in this kind of event would just be something else. And you think about pairing him with all the guys that we've had. So would be really, really cool. But I also understand it. I mean, he's over in Europe, doing very well for himself. So those have been kind of some of the ones.
Whenever the argument comes up about greatest basketball players of all time, I always get upset when it's just like, LeBron, Jordan, and no one mentions Devereaux, Jalen Reynolds, because that is truly, in my opinion, the best basketball player I've ever seen.
Like on 2K, they'll have like the My Teams, or has like a 99 overall version of like Brian Scalabrine. Like, I'm not comparing him to Brian Scalabrine, but like there is a 99 overall Jalen Reynolds, like who can just do no wrong, and it's Devereaux Jalen Reynolds.
Yeah, they should actually include a thing in NBA 2K where if you're playing in Woodward High School's gym, Jalen Reynolds is the best player in the game. That would be
just
fantastic.
Literally unstoppable. Posterize everybody.
So, I mean, just on that topic though, how difficult is it to get these guys to agree to play in TBT? Is it a tough sell for most of them? I know every guy's going to be different, have different things going on, but like, is it you're pulling teeth with each guy and it's really hard, or do some of them get pretty into it?
It just depends. And a lot of guys want to play, but it can be difficult with schedules. And for example, like summer league can be a really, really big thing for people. It's like, if you have a real NBA shot, I got to go summer league. And it almost always coincides with TBT, which has sometimes been frustrating, where you had, that was the thing with Kaiser Gates. He was like, man, I'm got a real NBA shot, which now he does. And he's like, I want to play XYZ, whatever. But, it can be tough at times because I get it. And this is also the rest period. I mean, a lot of them are just wrapping up pro seasons. They're wiped. Maybe they just went into the playoffs. Their bodies are tired. You know what I mean? So I can't really blame them for wanting to have free time and wanting to rest and, enjoy the fruits of their labor. But some guys are super into it. And even the guys that want to play and maybe can't, you never know what could be going on personally. They have lives. It can be a lot. So yeah, it can be a difficult sell. And then too, it's like, there's not guaranteed money here either. You know what I mean? And as we try to continue to scale this thing, you want to make it more of an attractive, attractive deal, whether you win all, because let's be honest, it's like winning 6 games in a row is hard. Winning any 64 team tournament. Yeah. I mean, let's just be realistic. It's hard to expect to do that. And as much as there's like a grand prize, it would be nice, in my opinion, this is the thoughts that I have of like, hey, maybe some kind of like model of, you meet certain incentives and, you can take home a little payday or something. But yeah, so that's kind of the scaling and some of the difficult things behind the scenes a little bit.
Now, you are in charge of sort of organizing this. You were the one that got the ball rolling in a lot of ways. You're not able to actually go out on the court and impact what happens in that way. I know you do have some impact in how you put the team together, but a lot of that is going to be on like the guys and who wants to play. And then you're kind of left with something that might happen like last year, right? Like it just didn't go the way you guys wanted. And you have been out there organizing this thing, kind of being the face of it. And I'm sure that was not the most fun moment last summer when they had the early exit playing at the Cintas Center. So for fans who may have a sour taste in their mouth from last year's run, why jump back in again this year as a Xavier fan of this Zip 'em Up team?
Yeah, I mean, I can be the first one to tell you, Rick, like I promise you I was probably having less fun than anybody in the entire arena. Just being a diehard Xavier fan, and then just, like you said, you had a pretty big impact in it being a thing. And then not only to lose at Cintas, but to lose the team we lost to lose the way we did, it's difficult, like you said. And you're kind of just, you're there. There's nothing you can really do to impact it. It's hard. You know what I mean? It was not fun. One of the least fun moments that I can remember is like, and then these guys, they're all pros and they're worried about the next steps. Like I had to make go through highlight films. So I had to like rewatch that game like multiple times. Like I'm like, God, this is like just ripping my soul out. Like I would rather be doing literally anything else. But I would say this, and I had a lot of thoughts in the offseason as well, because it was hard to process. It's like, in my opinion, this existing really in any capacity is still really, really cool. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing about TBT, in my opinion, is it's a 64 team tournament. It's kind of like the NCAA tournament in a lot of ways. You kind of need lightning in a bottle, and you kind of never know. And it's like these guys, it's not like they're coming from all over the globe. It's like you never know what mental state they're going to be in. There's been times where, boots hit the ground and we're great. You know what I mean? Everything's awesome. Everything's flowing. And then that just wasn't the case. I mean, guys were tired, and that's just life sometimes, It just didn't happen to hit that year. And it's like Xavier's had teams that were great. Like I'm thinking of the 2 seed team that was, that amazing team that just, it didn't happen in the tournament. You know what I mean? So, and that's the kind of the thing that makes me excited about TBT, though, is you never know what could happen. So for me, it's like we're still getting the guys together, and it's a new group, and I think we've done a lot of things to kind of improve.
Well, the other part that I would throw out there is, what else are you doing as a Xavier basketball fan in the 2nd or 3rd week of July? Right? Like, I mean, I understand last year didn't go the way you wanted, but like Xavier lost to Oakland in the non-conference schedule last year. You didn't pack it in for the year and be like, we're not going to watch the rest, right? I mean, it's still Xavier basketball. It's still what you want to do. So I get that last year was frustrating for some people. I think some people have gone a little bit overboard with the like, I'm out on TBT, I'm never watching again stuff. It's like, relax, it's still designed to be fun and bring back some good memories of the guys that you cheered for, and that brought you all types of great memories while they were in school.
But I 1000% agree, and I can see both sides of that coin. And that was one thing that hurt too, is it's like you look up in the stands and it's like, I don't know how many people are there, estimate two to 4,000 or something like that. But it's like they pay their hard-earned money to come out here, and it's not something they had to do. And I
Well, and
appreciate the fact that they did.
the Xavier fan base get like just even the Twitter, the social media. I know not everyone's like pouring money into this thing, but like even the social media dedication from Xavier fans can sometimes be a lot. Like people feel like they're invested into these things when they get into it.
And I get it. And then a lot of it too, I mean, some fans did donate to the team and stuff like that. So
Sure.
there's been a lot of investment by a lot of people. And and it was hard, for it to go out that way. Believe me, more than anything. But at the same time, I do agree with you. And it's like the players don't have to do this. You know what I mean? And it's not like there's a whole lot in it for them personally either. So it's like there's two sides of that coin, I would say.
It's not the same group of guys, not the same exact group of guys, but are there any holdovers or just is there any lingering feeling from last year where guys are like, hey, we kind of got to show a little bit better this year? Has that come up at all or not really?
It's going to be interesting, I think. And it's a relatively new group. I mean, it's a new core. I mean, a lot of our old core is gone. I mean, Samaje Kristen, I think, has been a cornerstone of our last few teams. Karam Cantor has been a cornerstone of our last few teams. They're not here. I think you're going to see like Nate Johnson be featured. I think you're going to see Adam Kunkel be featured. I think you're going to see Paul Scruggs get a ton of time. And those are guys that we didn't even have Kunkel last year. And the other guys, I mean, they were auxiliary players. So I think it's going to be a new group with a new mentality. And then we've seen with some of like the older guys, it's like you can just see, Rick, it's like just different eras of basketball. Like just, a guy like Mark Lyons and his mentality is just so much different than like a younger player. Like it's just so much different. You can tell that they were raised in different eras of basketball. In the way that they motivate each other and the way that they, go about their business is just much different. No, I'm not saying better or worse, but different. And you can tell it's like, hey, this is a 33-year-old, seasoned veteran, dealing with a 22-year-old who's, been a pro for like a year. You know what I mean? So it's just much, much different.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much it matters for TBT, but it is a great point just thinking back to like the 2010 Xavier locker room versus the 2016 Xavier locker room. Extremely different. As someone who covered them both and was around them both, that's a really good point by you. Those are two completely different cultures and groups of guys right there. So point well taken. That's funny to think about. When is the first game for you guys and how do people buy tickets?
Yeah. First game will be Friday, July 19th. If you follow us anywhere on social media, we will blast out that ticket link. If you'd like, I can send the ticket link anywhere. That would be easy to find. But even if you just go to tbt.com, type in the tournament on Google, go to our team name. It's going to be very easy to find. So that's how you get tickets Friday 19th. We're playing a team that, Xavier fans aren't going to know much about, but that is the bracket matchup will be the UC team and the Xavier team would play in the Sweet 16 of that tournament if we both win it. So that's kind of what we're looking at.
And obviously, encouraging anybody that can go and buy the ticket to this event continues to and comes to this area. But if they're not able to, or they live somewhere else, I believe all of the games are streamed on TBT site now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
If Xavier gets to the second round, they'll be on FS1, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. So there will be streaming on the TBT site through Fox. It's a shame Fanta's not on our game, but we'll give them some grief about that. But yeah, so it's going to be easy to see as well. But we do encourage people to come down if you can. I understand that but I mean, tickets are $20. And like you said, Rick, it's like if I was not involved, like what else am I doing? But at the same time, though, I get it. People live out of town. I do get it.
I don't know, and I don't want to speak for anyone or these guys and what they're doing. I don't want to commit their time, but I have heard this is an opportunity to get some pretty cool access to maybe some of your favorite former players that you might just happen to be able to bump into them after a game and they'll kind of do whatever, sign, take pictures, all those types of things. It's a pretty cool atmosphere sometimes if you happen to come across one of those interactions.
It is, like you said, it's kind of like going to like a concert that's like way more intimate, like maybe like a concert with like your favorite artist before they got big. Like, for example, like the second year, I think my favorite thing that's ever happened in TBT is the first 3-pointer that BJ hit. Like BJ just came out on the floor and just launched a 30-footer, drained it. The place went absolutely insane. And like BJ after
came out on the end of the game as like a walk-on type situation, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's just insane. And BJ after the game, like just kid in the candy store, just like did a lap around the entire arena. He may as well have been signing babies' foreheads for all I know. I mean, he just absolutely soaking it up. And like you said, you just never know if you're hanging around. Like guys hang out on the court. Like Trayvon was hanging out last year talking to people. It's really cool.
All right, let's assume, just for argument's sake, completely hypothetical, because we know last year TBT team and the real team scrimmaged each other. The reports came out about that. There was all types of stuff on social media about that happening. So let's just say that these two teams in a hypothetical matchup squared off, what do the lineups look like for the two teams? And how do we think it plays out? I've given my starting lineup for Xavier, this year's Xavier team, a bunch of times. I want to hear yours just for your thoughts on that in general, but I'll give you mine in case people have forgot. I think it's McKnight, Maddox, Conwell. I'll go Freemantle at the 4 for now, since we're in the middle of the summer. And I'm going to say Basil Trior is starting at the 5 instead of John Hughley for now, because they're going to be dangling the carrot, being like, you got to get in shape, big fella.
Shouts to Kenny on the pronunciation of Hughley there. I guess for me, I envision, and I'm a big Jerome Hunter fan club fan. I'm a huge just Jerome Hunter fan in general. I foresee, like, I'm a big seniors guy, so I want to see Jerome at the 4 and Zach at the 5 personally. But then again,
if it's like in a week from now or 2 weeks from now, Jerome's not going to be playing at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. I guess I was just like envisioning like my starting 5 over the season. Yeah. I think you've pretty much
hypothetical for 2 weeks from now or 1 week.
Hypothetical for 2 weeks from now. Yeah, in some crazy scenario where that was to happen, I think you've pretty much got the starting 5 down there. Okay. And I think if there was some kind of crazy scenario where that would happen, I think that the alumni side could have some additions that we're not maybe counting on. There could be some in a hypothetical scenario, because we're creating a dream scenario, Rick. This isn't reality.
Confirmed. Najee Marshall is coming back to play in the TBT. Confirmed.
David West will be playing. Yeah.
James Posey, Najee Marshall, and Lionel Chalmers when he gets done coaching NBA Summer League.
They will all be suiting up. Jordan Crawford as well. It's going to be a who's who.
All right. So that's interesting little tidbit there that you've teased us with that I assume you can't share any more on. So I'll leave it at that. Let's just go with the guys that you have on the team right now. And I'm going to assume you start an all Xavier lineup. Sure. Now, obviously there could be other guys that'll be featured players, but I would assume the first game, at least, you'll start all Xavier players. So I'm going to go with Scruggs, Kunkel, Nate Johnson, Trayvon Blewett playing small ball at the 4, and James Farr at the 5. What do you think of that starting lineup?
I would have constructed the exact same lineup. I think Malcolm Bernard plays a lot of minutes off the bench there. In my lineup, a perfect 6-man, I would have the exact same lineup.
Okay, so with that being said, if we're going Scruggs, Kunkel, Johnson, Blewett, Farr for the TBT team, we're going McKnight, Maddox, Conwell, Freemantle, Trior. What do we like there? And obviously we can mix and match this however we want, but like, are there any matchups you want to see that stand out to you? Are there any like advantages or disadvantages that you think about when you look at those lineups?
And it's tough too, as a Xavier fan, to be real with you. Like, I like to get a couple games of transfers to like really feel out how they're going to be. You know what I mean? Like,
I thought this is actually fun that they like thinking about them doing this, because it's like no one knows what this team looks like right now.
It's a perfect time to get games like this in with a transfer laden team like this. But I would love to see the McKnight Scruggs matchup. I mean, Scruggs is just such a long athletic defender. I think that would be a fun
Conwell
matchup.
Though too. That's the other one, like that length to guard Conwell. We're hearing so much about Ryan Conwell right now.
Ryan Conwell, super hot right now. But yeah, we
hot in the streets, Ryan Conwell.
Exactly. And it's like, I would assume you put Scruggs on Conwell would be like an ideal guard.
And that's a fun matchup to think about, especially on that end of the floor where Scruggs is on defense.
No question. I think Nate Johnson's a very good defender as well. Maybe you slide him over to McKnight. But I think that the TBT team has a lot of spacing that you can have. I mean, you think about a 2-3-4 of Kunkel, Johnson, Trey. It's a lot of shooting.
And that's one of the things that you think about. If we're going with the traditional lineup with 2 bigs for the current team and you put Freemantle in at the 4, think about Freemantle having to chase Blewett around.
Yeah, I don't think that would be ideal. I don't think that would be ideal guarding him out to 30 feet. And then
on the flip side, both of those are terrible matchups on the defensive. I mean, Blewett's not stopping Freemantle from doing whatever he wants.
It would be very offensive, I would tend to think. I don't think Trey would want a whole lot to do in the post against Zach, and that's with all due respect to Trey. Yeah, it would be interesting. And I think with the TBT team, I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest. Like, I think where you're looking at depth, is inside, with this team. And I think you have, look at these wings and guards, and you're pretty loaded. You know what I mean? In my opinion. So I would be interested to see the bigs, and I really don't know yet what these transfer bigs will bring for Xavier. So, yeah, and I think Jimmy Farr is a really experienced, big guy, but it would be interesting to see.
And then if you want to match up better and play like the personnel game, it's like, okay, slide Fremantle down to the 5. And now do we get like a Dalen Swain guarding Trayvon Blewett moment? But that would be so much fun to think about, right?
Okay, that would be incredible because
I,
Dalen, such an incredible, like, on paper defender. And I think he's a great defender. But like Trey's got some sauce to his game. It would be like
he's just
a
so
fun,
seasoned with it and so skilled now. He's going to be giving like the old man Paul Pierce pump fakes and stuff.
Exactly. Some like in his prime YMCA bag. Like, yeah, there was a play that Trey had in the first year of TBT, just like this half spin, step back. I mean, I like to think that Trey would get at least 1 and 1 3 on Dalen Swain. At least
yeah. Well, like kicking the leg, all the little
leg out,
subtleties.
Georgetown, baby, all day. So that would be a fun, like, I'm envisioning the Jordan commercial where it's like the North Carolina Jordan versus like the old Jordan, like I reach, you teach kind of vibe. So I think that could be a good one.
Yeah, I like the idea of this. This could be a fun game. I would love for them to play it. Who knows what'll happen? I don't know when those guys get into town and everything, but could be fun if fans get to watch that.
Yeah, we've talked about 2K, so maybe we could put some kind of hypothetical game going, but that would be a cool concept for sure. And then if there was a couple curveballs thrown in, that could also make it interesting.
Yeah, you're going with the teases again, man. You're gonna have people all worked up about that. Is there anything I missed with the TBT and the Zip 'em Up crew?
Regarding the TBT team, I don't think so. I think we've pretty much got it. There will be a couple more announcements on grad guys, like I said. But I think for TBT, we've mostly hit it. I'm just excited to see what happens. Like, I think this is an interesting group. The last thing I will say is I'm kind of interesting to see this year because what everyone wants to see is all the names, right? Like, everyone wants to see us get Crawford and two and everybody. But it's like part of me thinks that less is more. I mean, you've followed college basketball long enough to know, like, what's an ideal rotation? 8? You know what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily want 12 guys that are all expecting to be playing third. Like, I think at times less can be more. So I'm excited to see with this group. I think that was kind of the goal. So I'm excited to see what that looks like hey, we don't need to be looking over our shoulder to make sure that player 12 is getting their minutes necessarily. You know what I'm saying? So I think that's going to be an interesting piece. I think you have like a defined rotation. Whereas in the past, it's like, Kentucky hockey vibes. You know what I mean? Like, can guys really get rhythm playing that way? So I'm interested to see that dynamic this year.
We talked about at the top of the show some of the work you do with the Roll Blob podcast, and Kenny Freeze is now with you guys doing content. You guys took it to another level this year in terms of your road games. You did the live streams for all of them. You had more frequent podcasts, and then even some of the late games in the year, you guys were actual credentialed members of the media at Cintas Center, recording your show at the Cintas Center before games. So what's is that going to continue, or you got bigger things in the works for this coming year? Or what's the deal with the Roll Blob podcast crew?
Yeah, there's a lot. So this was kind of just a build the ship as it sails kind of season for us. Like, Kenny jumped on like pretty much before the season was starting, and we knew we wanted to get a lot going, and we just said, hey, we're just going to go. It's not all figured out. Like, our gear isn't figured out all the way. Like, but we're just going to go and do as much as we possibly can. So that's what we did. And we just went forward, did the best we could. And I think this offseason, we're just really getting our ducks in a row. And we really want it to be on another level. And I think too, it's just a grind, and you know that more than anybody. So I think now we're like ready for it, know what to expect. But yeah, we have way more plans. I think the Cintas will continue to go. I think there's one big project that's we're working on this summer that when it drops will be a Twitter nuke for sure. Like a big one. And then, yeah, we want to continue to build that content side. And Kenny's working on some pretty big stuff too. Kenny's phenomenal at this. He's not just a player that's on a podcast. Like, I think he's legitimately good at it. So I think he's got a bright future in the business for sure.
Yeah, I just thinking about this now. My last 2 shows have been Roll Blob podcast collaborations because Kenny was on the last one, and I genuinely just was getting him on to talk about the big men because it's like feels like a huge topic of conversation this offseason. When you look around now and like the Xavier media landscape, it's like who better to talk about what's going on with the bigs than a former player who has thoughts on it like Kenny. And it's fun to have a guy like you can always go out and get a former player to talk about these things, but not always are they invested in it and like actually thinking about what's going on during the off season. And Kenny is right now. So that makes it fun to have these conversations with a guy like him.
He's a great guy to talk about bigs too. The streams are hilarious because the way he treats the big, sometimes the bigs, he has no patience. It's really, really funny to watch. And you're right. He's more invested in it. Like, he is distraught when we lose. Like,
well, last year was a tough year to be watching the bigs, in fairness.
Yeah, in general, it wasn't the most fun to be doing streams. There would have been better Xavier seasons to be doing streams. But it was still super, super fun.
Okay, let's go through a couple things. Just kind of, we got some mailbag questions from people on the message board and on Twitter, and a couple other things I want to touch on briefly. First of all, let's start here because I haven't really talked to you at all since the spring or summer started, and we went through the transfer portal, all that. You can take this any way you want, any direction. I don't care. What was your favorite part of this offseason?
Favorite part of the offseason? I can take it any direction I want to.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened.
There is a lot of things that have happened. I was shocked at the amount of transfers that happened. Are we considering Blue Demon Degenerate a part of the offseason?
Yeah. Well, wait, is that the whole Jeff Goodman issue and the?
Yeah, I mean that was just a funny day.
That was a good day.
Yeah, and it's like that was just awesome. Like, just fun. Like, isn't it great, Rick, when like Twitter's just on fire? Like,
yes,
that
happens more in the Big East than any other conference that I can think of.
It's crazy that we live in a world where literally a burner account was the number one college basketball story for days. Like like I was Mark Titus' show, for example. Like that was the topic. I'm like, this is insane. Like just insane.
The best reporter in college basketball is a burner account in Trilly.
You're not wrong about that.
Yeah, it's just where we're at.
And the landscape has just changed so much, which is crazy, but that was awesome. And for me, it was just like the volume of transfers. And I think Conwell is just, like, I know that he's the popular guy at the moment, but I think that was just such a home run for Xavier. And I think for me, it was like not only did we get good players, but like the volume of like high quality transfers that Xavier landed. So I think for me, it's also fun just seeing Xavier on ranking graphics, as much as that's stupid. I enjoy it after a season like last year, especially like 13. I'm like, that just looks good. I like that number next to my school's logo.
All the too early top 25 list you're talking about.
Oh yeah. It gets me going. And I hate that about myself. It's like, if you like listen to like top 40 radio, it's like, I don't like that about me, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, hey, they always say, I mean, the top 25 preseason rankings actually do hold a lot of weight in terms of who ends up ranked at the end of the year. So I don't think that's a crazy thing to get excited about.
Can I ask you the same question?
My favorite part of the offseason?
Yeah.
I like to think about the moment where, and I don't know how this played out, to be clear, so I am not like sharing scoop here, but this is how I like to envision it in my mind. We know about the fact that Chris Cantino helped bring Cameron Fletcher back to Xavier, correct? Everyone is aware of that story. We've talked about that on Musketeer Report. I like to envision like Sean Miller, maybe Mario, maybe an assistant coach or whoever else needs to be involved in that conversation. Chris Cantino just hammering out a deal together. Like that visual to me is
like in a boardroom, sitting across from each other, like really long table.
A long table, yes, a very long table.
A stupidly long table. That I'm just glad that we have another reason to talk about Chris Cantino.
Yeah, I mean it's amazing how he's managed to stay around the Xavier fan base for so long without ever playing a second of basketball.
I feel like it's every few years we have a reason to talk about Chris Cantino again.
I
think Travis Steele brought him up as like the funniest guy from like on one of your podcasts from like a decade ago. Like he always comes around. I love it.
Yeah. I posted on Musketeer Report a sort of roundup of all these comments. Xavier's been releasing these videos with Sean Miller talking about the 7 new transfers, and they were trickled out over a period of a couple of weeks. And so I tried to round up all those things, just put them in note format, bullet points, and put them all in one spot. And I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that stood out to me. 2 comments that he made in particularly. One was about Dante Maddox Jr. He said that he's likely to make a significant impact similar to past transfers like Sule Boom and Quincy Oliveri. Now, we've talked a lot about Ryan Conwell, and rightfully so. I think everyone understands Ryan Conwell as an enticing prospect for Xavier after what he's done. Dante Maddox's numbers are pretty darn impressive, and from Toledo, and everything that we have heard about him and from the coaching staff, if I was a Xavier fan, it would get me pretty excited. And then you see a comment like this of like, first of all, it makes me excited about what is Ryan Conwell going to look like? If you're saying that Dante Maddox could be like a Quincy Oliveri or a Sule Boom, and again, I understand it's the middle of July. He's trying to talk up the new players. All of this has to be taken with a grain of salt to some extent.
Sure.
But I also think Sean Miller is fairly thoughtful when he says things and pretty direct when he says things about his team. And for him to be talking about like this about Dante Maddox, when they also clearly have really high expectations for Ryan Conwell, that would make me really excited as a Xavier fan about what those two players can be.
Yeah, I think you hit that on the head. If he's a Quincy Oliveri, like, are we looking at a Jordan Crawford? Wouldn't break my heart. And to be honest with you, Rick, it's like I did the classic fan thing. When we get our transfers, I'm gonna go on YouTube and I'm gonna watch a good 5 to 10 minute, highlight film. It's my favorite pastime. You get a commitment. What do? You watch a highlight film. And just on highlights alone, like on camera, like I think Maddox pops off the most. Like his quickness, like his just on camera skills. Like, because I think, some of the other guys, it's like, okay, you're making threes, not really the most spectacular thing to watch. But like Maddox has got some sauce to his game.
I agree with that. He puts some fun things on film in terms of his highlights and in transition, what he does. And he's also small and got that kind of bowling ball package to where it's like when he does things, it looks cool and
it does
very
look cool,
abrupt and quick. So I really enjoyed watching him too.
On that, I like to win, but I also like to I also like to win in a cool way. To be honest with you, I like to dunk. Like
shout out to Jalen Reynolds.
Yeah, I want some Jalen Reynolds in my game. You know what I mean?
So one of the other comments that really stood out to me that Sean Miller made about the 7 newcomers, Basil Trior, formerly Lucina Trior, now going by his nickname, I guess, of Vasile that he's been going by for most of his life. Anyway, he said he's effective at moving his feet away from the basket and guarding ball screens is a valuable skill of his. Now that jumps out to me because whenever I think about Xavier's front court this year, I start thinking about Zach Freemantle and John Hughley. And on the offensive end, that makes me think fantastic things for what Xavier could be. The defensive end, even if everything works out in an ideal fashion and John Hughley is the best shape of his life and Zach Freemantle as healthy as can be and in the best shape of his life, like everyone says he is, I still don't think you're very good defensively with those two guys on the court together. So I've really thought this entire time that with Trior, the key is going to be, does he make you better defensively? Can he give you a different look if you're not matching up well, you're having issues getting stopped? And specifically, if a team's just killing you with ball screens and you can't figure out what to do with that, can he help you there? And we'll see what this actually means when you get into real game action, especially in Big East play. But Sean Miller, at least making these comments now about he moves his feet really well away from the basket, he's good at guarding ball screens, that would be a big sigh of relief, at least for now, as a Xavier fan.
No question. And that's what coaches are going to want, like that defensive versatility. Like that is such a huge piece as far as like how much you can play a guy. What's he bringing offensively, in your opinion? Is that not really his strengths? Like his strengths more on the side?
I don't think a ton. I mean, just watching him, he's not a super skilled guy. He's not a guy that you want taking a bunch of jump shots. Now, it's not like he doesn't have any touch away from the basket. I think in the mid-range, he can get a little bit done. And he definitely had some nice finishes in traffic and offensive stickbacks at Long Beach State. But we've kind of already seen this, right? Like a guy who isn't he averaged double digits, but not a go-to offensive player at a lower level, making the jump up to the Big East. You're probably not going to be throwing the ball into him a lot. You're probably not going to get a lot more out of him from an offensive perspective. I think the key for Trior and him being a productive member of this team really lies in the rebounding and the defense. Can he give you a different look from what Hughley and Freemantle give you? Because they are going to be so much more offensive oriented.
Yeah, and it's nice that you have those changeups. It sounds like they all can do a lot of different things. So it's nice to have those abilities to do that. And we've had that with Xavier for such a long time, that the 3-headed monster bigs. Also, shouts to the Long Beach State beach.
Yeah, that's right. The beach. One other comment situation I wanted to get your thoughts on here. Josh Schertz, who is now the St. Louis head coach, was the former Indiana State head coach, coached Ryan Conwell last season. They won 30 games. He told John Rothstein, quote, "I think he'll play in the NBA," talking about Conwell. "I think he's an NBA combo guard. He's got unbelievable size for the position. He's got a great toughness about him. He can do everything offensively." Now, this is a kid that not only transferred away from his St. Louis team as he was leaving, transferred away from his Indiana State team, but also elected not to go with him to St. Louis as he was moving up a level. So it's not like he has a ton of reason here to go out of his way to say nice things about what Ryan Conwell is going to be in the future, other than they have a relationship, obviously. What were your thoughts when you read Ryan Conwell is going to be playing in the NBA, according to his former head coach?
Well, I went back to Twitter today like 7 times just to read that tweet over again, just because it makes me happy. Uh, one of those tweets you just enjoy reading. I like it, to be honest with you. I know that's going to shock you, but I do enjoy it quite a bit. I mean, if he's in the NBA, he's pretty dang good this year. But he has 2 years eligibility, correct?
Right.
So I would rather that be in 2 seasons than next season. But he's got everything. And especially too, I enjoy getting players who we've seen win at a big level. And I think he was just a huge piece of how much they were winning last year. So I like that.
Is there any point as a Xavier fan where you start getting concerned about how much hype there is about Ryan Conwell this offseason? Like, it's been nonstop since he committed. Every media outlet is like, love this get for Xavier. Rothstein can't go 2 days without saying something glowing about Xavier and Ryan Conwell.
And it's like,
at some point, does it concern you?
A little bit, because I always talk about the buy low. And I'm a little scared we're looking at a sell high here a little bit. I mean, sometimes it scares me. The stock's getting a little frothy. But and my thing is too, Rick, like, do all these people really think this? Is there just an echo chamber? It's just like someone had this opinion, and then it's like 7 other people are like, all right, well, he does his homework. I'm sure I'll jump on it.
There's a ton of that in college basketball. It's like funny to me when we've got the transfer portal era where right now in the offseason, the top 25 list should be as wild and unpredictable as we've ever seen. Because it's like you don't know what most of these teams look like, given that we haven't seen most of their most important players.
They all turned over everything.
And yet all these top 25 lists are like exactly the same, just slight differences between us.
You move this team over too.
Yeah, you're all just taking the first top 25 and slightly tweaking it. Come on, we know.
It's just like the Microsoft Paint, just dragging it. Let's put this one over here. All right, 5 minutes, done. All right, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool.
All right, let's go into some mailbag questions we got here from Twitter and the message board. We'll start with an easy one here. Who leads the team in dunks this year?
Leads the team in dunks. I like this because your mailbag's a lot different than mine. That would have been a very stupid question on our podcast, so this is kind of a nice change of pace. I'm gonna go probably our boy Trior. You have to pronounce the name for me. I'm not there yet.
Trior?
Yeah.
That's my best pronunciation. I'm just going off of what previous play-by-play announcers have said on all of these guys. That's the only research that I've done.
The best way to go. And is there an obvious answer that I'm missing here?
I don't think there is, actually. I think this is a tough one. I'm going to go with Zach Freemantle just because I think he'll have the most easy opportunities. Yeah. Not that I expect him to be doing a ton of hard dunking. I think Dalen Swain will have the most fun dunks this year, if I had to guess.
When are we expecting Jerome Hunter to be good to go?
I don't know. They keep saying he's going to be ready for the beginning of the season, and maybe they're 100% right about that. I just feel like that's a lot more of a situation where it's like they want everyone to feel good about this and want Jerome to be optimistic and feel good about it, and they're going to continue to say that as the target deadline until it's not.
Right.
But I find it hard to believe that he'll be playing a ton of minutes when the season opens.
I agree, kind of just that, just from a feel standpoint at this point. But if I get a full season out of Jerome, he might be my pick.
It's not. That's not a terrible idea. The only thing is he is also coming off that Achilles. So
you're right. But you're so right though about Freemantle. He's just always scoring somehow. He just always finds a way to put the ball in the basket.
And he gets those easy ones. He's not going to throw down a bunch of emphatic dunks that makes you think he's a dunker, but he's going to get those loose ball dunks, the offensive rebound dunks, just
a jump up two-hander, something simple.
And I don't think this is a team that'll have a ton of dunks. It'll be more than last year, but I don't think it's going to be a ton.
I also tend to argue that not all dunks should be created as a Jalen Reynolds dunk should count as 3. A Zach Freemantle dunk shouldn't count for as many dunks as a Jalen Reynolds dunk.
And I think Dalen Swain will have those emphatic dunks this year where you're like, oh, he's the dunker on the team, but he's not going to have as many as some of the other guys.
Yeah, Kenny's loving that. But you're exactly right, though. If we were going off game breaker points in NFL or an NBA street, Dalen's getting way more than Zach. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, that's a good way. Game breaker points is a good way to visualize that.
I knew that'd be a key to your heart.
From a stats perspective, what does a good year from Davon McKnight look like? Does his scoring load increase, or does the improved roster result in him taking fewer shots and running up the assist total?
We've talked about this on the podcast. We actually argued about this a lot. I don't see how you take Davion off the floor for more than just a breather. I don't see how Sean plays him for less than 35 minutes a game. I just don't.
Well, the only thing I'd say about that is you do have 2 other guys on your roster now who have played with the ball in their hands a lot as the point guard for their teams in Dante Maddox and Ryan Conwell. So if you needed to at all, you can take him off the floor more. But to your point, I mean, every time Sean Miller talks about Davon McKnight, and this is going back to like February, it's been extraordinarily positive, glowing reviews, and so excited about what he's going to be next year that it makes you think he's kind of just one of Sean's guys. Like Sean really values what he brings, likes his makeup, likes how his approach, and they're going to stick with him. So here's my take on what I think in terms of his stat line. I think around 12-ish points is probably right for him. Now, would it be crazy to me if he averaged 13 or 14 this year and scored a little bit more? No. But I do think you're going to see him be more aggressive with the three-point shot. That was something that changed a lot as the year went on. He started looking for the three-point or more. And you've heard Sean say it multiple times this offseason of like, we're going to try to get him away from the mid-range jumpers and shooting more open threes when he gets that opportunity. So I could see him scoring more efficiently, maybe taking even fewer shots, but scoring around the same or even slightly more.
And that's where I'm at too, Rick. I really don't care about the number totals. I don't care about how many points he's scoring. I care about the efficiency stats. I want to see the assist to turnover ratio. I want to see the efficiency, because with all the weapons on this team, it's like, I don't need Davion going out and scoring 18 a night. Like we have tons of offensive options.
Yeah. And I do think the assist number will go up because with the way he pushes the ball in transition and he can spray it out to shooters, you're going to have more shooters this year. Last year, you're spraying out, and like, if it ain't Quincy, it ain't going in. So
yeah, it's going to be a much different makeup. I'm excited to see what this looks like. And you talk about a hypothetical game between two certain teams, like both can just spray and pray, like just fun basketball.
Yeah. The other thing I think about this too is if we're assuming, like, let's just buy all in on the Ryan Conwell hype and assume he's going to be fantastic, one of the best scorers in the Big East, all of that, then I think for Maddox or McKnight, becoming that second scorer in the backcourt is going to be a really interesting storyline for this team. And maybe it's both of them to some extent. And if that's the case, I think Xavier's in a really good spot. Maybe it's kind of by committee. One night it's one night it's Maddox, one night it's McKnight. That could still work out for them too. But part of me thinks it's going to be like one or the other. One kind of becomes the second scorer to Conwell, and the other takes a little bit more of a step back in terms of shots.
That's what's crazy is how the dynamic's going to play out. And a lot of it's just confidence based over how the season plays out. And I'm just excited to see the Rick Broering talk about how good Ryan Conwell is tweet. That's when I'll know it's real, when you're willing to jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I like him a lot too. It's always funny when we get into these things where we've been saying the same things over and over for like 2 months. And then you're just watching people around the country. You're like, wait, have you seen more than have you seen something that I haven't seen? I got to know, because the glazing is just insane at this point. But, all right, next question is, how do you think Swain and Foster compare to the defensive stoppers of the recent past? Colby, Najee, Bernard, and Abel. First of all, let me just say this. I definitely wouldn't have Marcus Foster in the conversation of defensive stopper, at least not yet. That's not what I saw from him at Furman, and we haven't seen anything from him yet at Xavier. In terms of Swain, I also would not have him in the defensive stopper category yet, but I kind of get where you're going with that. Like, in theory, he could be their best defensive player this year and could enter the conversation of these other guys. Do we want to go through ranking Najee Marshall, Colby Jones, Remy Abel, and Malcolm Bernard here as defensive stoppers?
I think we do. So we have Remy, Malcolm Bernard, Najee, and who's our fourth?
Colby.
Who are you taking, the number one out of those four?
I think I've got to go Najee. And I know it maybe wasn't always as consistent at that time, but I think there was a lot going on with those teams too. And I also think you have to remember that he ended up getting drafted because of what he put on film defensively.
Yeah, it's hard to go
against. I should say he ended up making the NBA based on what he put on film defensively.
It's hard to go against Najee. I feel like from a consistency basis, I'm taking Remy next, just for how consistently good he was defensively.
Remy's the toughest one for me, because I agree that like you could count on Remy every single time that you needed him to guard the other team's best player, but it's also in college. It's like he doesn't have some of the measurables of those other guys at his best. I don't think he is as talented and as good as those other guys, but I do feel like he was the most consistent of the four. So
I agree.
That's tough for me. I could go Colby or Remy with that second
spot.
But
Najee can almost like change a game on a play. Like you said, it's not a play Remy's probably going to be making.
To me, the Najee upside, like when he was at his best, he could guard anyone in the country, any position. He's got the highest upside, and so far higher than these other guys that he's number one. And then it becomes a question for number two, but I'd probably lean Colby, But if you want to say Remy, I think that's a good argument too. And then I would definitely have Malcolm fourth.
Yeah, I agree. And Malk had some fantastic defensive plays, but I'm not going to, sorry, not Najee. Najee's just something else defensively. And I think we kind of talked about, that aspect of Dalen. I think that's kind of where Dalen is. He's in that mode where, he has flashes, but I'm not going to put him in Remy mode of like, all right, any given night, Dalen's going to shut down whoever we need him to shut down.
Yeah. And like, if he takes that step this year, this team, we're talking about them being a top 25 team all year. And we're talking about some of the special things that
he's such a
briefly referenced.
With how deep this roster is, because like Dalen could be a player like going into a normal season when you're like, okay, he should make a really big jump. He could be a counted on piece. But like the depth chart, and like I would kind of want to hear about the depth chart at some point of like Trey Green. Like there's just so many pieces. And then we kind of talked about how much it's going to be hard to take Quincy off the floor. Not Quincy, excuse me, Davion. Like, so it's like Trey, and you're only 5 foot. I've seen you in person. You're like 5'7".
But like
5'6".
I know Davion got his 3-point shooting percentage up to like, I think it was 37% by the end of the year last year or whatever, but he's also not shooting a ton of threes. And I think we would all agree that he's not like a big time threat from 3-point range, or he wasn't last season. Right. I love the idea of Trey Green taking that step forward, putting him in the same lineup as Maddox and Conwell and maybe even Foster. Like if you have 4 dudes who are all slinging it like that, but are actual players too. Now there are questions about size and defense, obviously, but that I get pretty excited. That lineup does things for me when I start thinking about the amount of shooters you can put on the court. Cause every single year I sit here around this time of year, I go, I don't know if they have enough shooting, guys. And like, this year I'm not saying that.
Every single year. And this year, even if Rick says we might have enough shooting, I feel pretty good about our shooting.
You have to, because it's like, it's my thing every year. I'm like, I just don't know. I don't see how there's enough shooting.
This roster, you can never say it.
Yeah. I actually feel like this team has enough shooting going into the season.
Wow. That is my favorite thing I've ever heard on this podcast.
All right, let's wrap it up with this. Curious about Cameron Fletcher's timeline when it comes to him being available to play. Is the staff aiming for him to play later this upcoming season or more towards next season? The thing with Cameron Fletcher, and actually people are talking about like, is he redshirting or not today on social media? I saw he is not redshirting, but this is being looked at as get healthy, develop, get yourself to 100+%. Make sure you're more than ready before you start working back into the mix for contact, before you start trying to play any extended minutes. When will he be available for Xavier to like actually play minutes? I don't know. It could be as soon as the beginning of the season, but I definitely don't think you're going to see him playing like half the game in non-conference games. Now, by the time we get into Big East schedule and the turn of the new year, all bets are off. Like if they need him and he's able to do it, I could definitely see him working his way into the mix, because he gives you a physical piece that you otherwise don't have on your roster typically ever. I mean, he's like that Najee Marshall build. I wrote that in the Impact when he committed. It's like 6'7", 220 is what Najee Marshall was when he graduated. That's Cameron Fletcher, versatile, athletic, big and strong. Yes, he's coming off back-to-back ACL injuries.
He might be more naturally big and strong than I feel like Najee had to put some weight on. So Cameron Fletcher, back when I was way more into recruiting, spent a lot more time on the message boards. Unfortunately, I don't as much anymore. He was one of those like heartbreak recruits, because I know that Xavier was kind of on him, but he was probably more of like a added Xavier to my list kind of recruit. But that was a heartbreak recruit because he's got measurables for days.
I mean, he went to Kentucky originally and was viewed as a very talented athlete, transition dunker type guy. And he never got on track at Kentucky, and then he transferred and had the back-to-back ACL injuries. It's like both years at Florida State, he started off the year well and looked good, but he just hasn't been able to escape that injury bug so far. So this year, again, is all about getting him healthy and developing him, but it's also about like when you start looking at what Xavier did in this year in the transfer portal and what their roster looks like, all of a sudden it's like, wait, every guy on this year's team is going to be leaving. So they went out, they got Cameron Fletcher, they got Roddy Anderson, a couple of guys with the long-term view in mind, to where it's like, well, these guys are taken with 2025, 2026's roster in mind, but you never know with Cameron Fletcher. Maybe he'll help you late in this year too.
Sean's work on just putting together so much talent in this program, not even the talent that's going to be there this year, is just like, God, he compiled a lot of talent this offseason.
Yeah, and I think, like, look, I don't know if anyone has the secret sauce or the right formula yet to how to navigate college basketball in 2024 or 2023. And we saw that last year. Like, what they did not work. And that was their way of doing things that they tried to bring over from Arizona and sitting out a year. And I think they felt that was really going to work. And then everything changed. So it didn't work. And the great thing about having a guy like Sean Miller is he's not going to bang his head into the wall and just do the same thing over and over again that didn't work. He completely changed up his approach and he's finding another way. Now, maybe this will work, maybe it won't. I tend to think it will based on what they've done this offseason, that they're going to be in a much better spot. But even if they don't, to me as a fan, this would just be so much easier to accept than being like, oh, we're going to run it back with doing it the same way or the same group of guys, or we're going to go out and get a couple more unproven freshman big men to replace the ones that didn't work out last season or something like that. It's like they understood what went wrong last year and they're trying to address that.
RIP, do what we do.
I don't think it'll ever be RIP to do what we do. I think the new guys just have to do what we do now. It just be new guys doing what we do every year.
They weren't doing what we do, so now these guys are gonna do it.
Yeah,
I'm tracking. Yeah, I'm excited, man.
They did what we did, so it's new guys doing what we do.
It's like that.
All right. Well, he is Jason Meyer, CapX34 on Twitter now.
34 now. Stanley Burrell is now who we're honoring. RIP to the Justin Dolman account, but now it's Stanley Burrell account.
Yeah. CapX34. Jason, seriously appreciate you coming on and talking TBT and zip them up. Good luck to you guys here in a couple of weeks when that all tips off. And I assume all the Musketeer Report faithful will be watching.
I appreciate it. Thanks for talking about it and hope the fans have fun with it. Absolutely. Go ahead.
All right. He is Jason Meyer, CapX. Thanks everyone for listening.